G'day everybody, welcome to a garden update on the 16th of January, I think it is. This is going to be, 2 weeks after the last one. Just going to run through and just see some of the big changes in the garden and some of the interesting stuff that's going on now that we finally have some warm weather. So the corn in the main corn bed is doing quite well here. You can see this is an interesting display of when it doesn't get sun. So these few stalks just up the back here and at the front get blocked by the herb, well, what used to be a herb bed, we'll get to that in a second. But the ones that get more sun on the left hand side are actually much bigger. Leaves are very prominent and they're a lot taller. So just an obvious sign of how sunlight can drastically affect your garden, which I know very much so from where I used to live, where I was kind of in a townhouse block which got basically no sun at all. Up the front, just some beans. These are just basic, actually these are climbing beans. I know a lot of people put climbing beans with their corn to grow up the stalks. I didn't intend to do that, but it probably will happen here. This is just some lettuce, I think iceberg lettuce, that happened to regrow after I thought I got rid of it because I thought it was dead, but here we are again. Now the pumpkin and sunflower bed is a very interesting situation. So we've got these are giant single head sunflowers which are, as you can see, just about to flower. There's the head there that's about to pop out. You can also see it in a couple of the other ones as they're probably nearly 6 feet tall. I think they'll probably be 6 feet by the time the flower actually pops out and blooms. This one over here is a little bit shorter because it was devastated by some snails earlier on in its life. Now the interesting part here are these are the pimple pumpkins, as they're colloquially known. So these are the pumpkins that have little warts on the skin caused by excess sugar in the skin. Now the pumpkin, as pumpkin tends to do, has gone quite wild in here and has grown up the little trellis up the back and the pallet that I put in here. And as you can see in here, it's also growing up the sunflowers. So this sunflower here has a couple of tendrils that are wrapping around. I love how they're like little springs, allowing it a bit of movement. It's really cool, like natural engineering. At the moment, we don't actually have any pumpkins besides a couple of very small baby ones. I can't actually see where they are. Can't remember where they are. But earlier on in the season, I've been advised the pumpkins tend to just shoot out the male flowers for the time being. As you can see, a few male flowers here. They've just got the stem and then the flower at the end. Here's one. So this is the male flower there. But the female flowers with the fruit on them are starting to come out, and I'll try and find one. So these over here, there you go. There's one. So this is going to be a pumpkin once it grows out a bit. There's also a couple more down here in the midst of this little jungle. But as you can see, this is all the pumpkin growing through. So it's coming across, jumping through the sunflowers and using it like its own little trellis to climb up. Meanwhile, down here we have these are a mix of zucchinis, and there is a cucumber within this mix somewhere, I think. Or maybe I lost it, I can't remember. We've definitely got some zucchinis here. The first of which starting to fruit out there, down at the bottom. And some peas up the back, which are growing up this diamond trellis I put in, which was originally for the peas and has come out for the pumpkins. I might have to redirect some of these now, that I don't want them going over the fence. That's the pumpkins, zucchini and sunflower bed. So what we're going to do is pollinate this female pumpkin flower, just because I want to get them started up for the summer, because we're already halfway through. So you can see the female there. There's the I think it's called the inferior ovary is the technical term for it, which is obviously what we call a fruit. And then we open it up, and that's the female part of the flower. So it's quite receptive to pollen, and of course, generally bugs that'll carry pollen in there. And I've taken a male flower, pulled away the petals of the flower, and you can see all of the pollen that's on top. So what we'll do, birds and the bees kind of story here, we'll go in, we'll shove it around. I'm sure all the kids at home are loving this. So we'll make sure there's a good amount of pollen on there, and that should pollinate the fruit. So this is the second box with some corn and some carrots in here on the side as well, along with a couple of pollinators, such as these guys here. I think it's a type of, I can't actually remember what the name of this one is, but it's flowering nicely. And then this little guy here, little firecracker down in the bottom there. But these, the corn here is the same age as the last batch in the other main corn bed, just slowly growing up. I'm not sure if we're going to get much production off these because it is already halfway through summer, and normally for corn I believe you need about 16 weeks of growing time, and these guys have really only had the last like 3 and a bit weeks since Christmas effectively. So we'll see what happens. I'm obviously not going to change anything, but we'll see how they come out as we get towards the end of summer. And who knows, the summer, the breadth of the heat and the sun might actually extend a little bit longer this season, but we'll find out very soon. Over in this bed we have the carrots, which are now probably 2 months old, so they're nearly ready to pull out. You can see a couple of them in here. There you go. These are Manchester table. These are ones that my grandma used to grow all the time. A few more pollinators, some beetroot. I wonder how this beetroot's going. Nah, not really going too well. And these are little capsicums that aren't having the best of time because when I planted them it was so cold and so rainy. They've really taken their time. This is a very common thing at the moment to have a lot of, like, I guess you call it stunted sort of growth with all of your plants at the moment. Further along we've got the nasturtium, which has some beautiful flowers in here. There you go. Nice little flowers, along with the celery, and then some peas that are much more mature. We've got a lot of pods here which I need to pick, with a friendly little Spider-Man in here. Let's see if I can zoom in on him. Not too sure what that is, but I might eye naturalist him and see what we got. But he's been there the whole time, grabbing some flies, setting up a web there. I almost said a net, a fly net. But yeah, these peas are doing well, so I've got to pick them all. Hopefully we get some more produce soon after I give them a pick. Meanwhile, in the bed to the side, so this is where I've got a lot of climbing beans and the wigwam, which I set up. Gonna do a little bit of adjusting sometimes to make sure it knows where to go. But these guys are really, they're great at climbing. As you can see, this was actually just down here at the start of the day, and he's climbed up quite quickly. But the beans, this is kind of really bad forward planning here, but these beans up the back are actually just dwarf beans, whereas these ones are the climbing ones, so I'll be able to get these ones off, but then it's a bit of a reach to get down the back. A couple of basic symphony lettuces there. I can't remember the actual name of them, but I've got to do some weeding. As we can see, a lot of grass starting to come through in these beds. That's all right, we'll get in there and fix that up on the weekend. Up the back is probably the most productive area of the garden as a whole. We've got a whole bunch of lettuce here. Now, one of the fun things I found is that I thought these were actually, when they started, you could only see these little, what looked like cucurbit leaves, the initial leaves, but they turned out it's actually borage. So if anyone remembers, this actually used to be where my giant, like 8-foot borage was growing, and I took it out several, like 2 months ago now. And obviously some of the seeds did fall in, and so we've got some borage growing in here. I generally like the approach of just sort of letting things go, so I'm happy to leave these borage. They're great for pollinators, as you can see, alongside these zinnias that I've got in the mix. And these are all alongside a mixture of iceberg and I can't remember the name of this one, it's like a butter leaf lettuce, but just lots of lettuce down this side of the bed. Meanwhile, the Kaihua, I'm awful at pronouncing that, growing very, very tall now. I've actually never grown these before, as I mentioned in the previous video, but I am hoping they'll start fruiting soon. But it does look like a bit of a suspicious kind of plant, but you can tell that it's not that other plant because it's vining. Down here at the front, as I said before, very stunted plants because of the slow start to summer. For those of you playing at home, normally we have a summer starting in like warmer temperatures, so sort of like 20-25 degrees, a little bit more average consistency, somewhere around about, I don't know, November, end of November-ish, maybe a little bit earlier, depending on where you are. But this year we had basically no warmer weather until late December. So this is why a lot of these plants, such as these cucumbers, are actually very, very small comparatively to where they should be. And it's also obviously going to delay production of the fruit, as we'll see very soon when we get to the tomatoes. So we got a nice little fuchsia here. And this is a rock melon, some more lettuce. So what I do is I come along and I pick up the lettuce when I need to, and we have it in salads and sandwiches and things like that. One of the tomatoes that's just randomly over here for some reason. And then we get to more beans. So these are some more climbing beans. Again, not the greatest of planning because I'm going to have these beans climbing up the front and then these ones climbing up the back, but it's all good. We'll just have a lot of beans to play with. And as you move along, you come to the tomato section of the garden. So we've got some Black Russians, mixes of low acid Romas and other sorts that are growing here. These are all about somewhere around about, I don't know, 3 or 4 feet tall, depending on which one you're looking at. They've been flowering now for a little while, and you can actually see that some of the fruit has already, sort of progressed quite nicely. Alongside this is things like basil, some lettuces, some various sorts of cos, and some of this other one, which I've forgotten the name of. And these are all, the original plan was that this whole wall would be covered with either, cucumbers, beans, the kaiju down the end, or the tomatoes, of course, but unfortunately, we haven't really gotten there. But we're getting there eventually. Hopefully we'll have a reasonable amount of tomatoes to play with and do some cooking with as we progress a little bit further into the summer. So this is the bed that's, I think as I mentioned in the previous video, the discard pile. So just some tomatoes that I thought were dead, but they actually weren't. The odd cucumber, some nasturtiums, and a strawberry spinach down the back, which is actually starting to fruit. You can see these little nodules on there are actually the flowers and then the fruit that'll start forming on there. Second to last bed here, it was just some more discard sort of seedlings that I had, and this bed is still cursed. Although it seems to be doing better this time. The discard tomatoes are actually coming up all right, and the beans have somehow recovered from being basically nothing. I'm not exactly sure what's happened there. And the final bed, I guess you'd call it, is the veggie pod. So we got basil going absolutely nuts here. I've done the separation trick with this. If you want to see what that is, it's basically that you pull out one of the mainline stems, and then these side shoots actually start producing more and more, so you can get a really bushy basil plant if you're doing that properly. In here we've got these beans, which I probably didn't think about this properly about how big these would actually get. Normally these dwarf beans don't actually get this big, but these guys have really enjoyed it in here. I'm not exactly sure why. But there's some more lettuce, which looks like it's going to go to seed very soon, and some beetroot, which probably it's starting to grow. And again, one of these chilies, similar to the capsicum over the other side, is just not growing until now. You can start to see some of the smaller leaves in there as it grows out. And lastly, the spinach, not spinach, I got mixed up with strawberry spinach. This is a real strawberry. It's just flowering out out like crazy at the moment, so lots of these really lovely flowers, and we'll get a lot of strawberries soon, I think. And that's a tour around the garden as of January 16, 2023.